Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Seconds. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland, this is for you.
Good evening, Cavs fans, and welcome back to another episode of The Block, The Shot, The Stop. I am Kevin Lynch here doing our NBA Weekly episode. You all know Skylar Webker, and we have a special guest tonight, Zach. Zach, welcome to your first episode of the Block, The Shot, The Stop podcast. But before we get going, I'll set up. We got a lot of fun topics tonight. Normally this is the one episode we don't go live for, but because of the topics, we decided let's do it on a Sunday night. Let's let people know we're going to be live and hopefully get some interaction. We're going to start with, we have three main topics. The Cavs 3-point shooting. The Cavs have been on an absolute tear, 6-game winning streak, putting up crazy offensive numbers, including the 3-point shooting. We'll get into that here shortly. We want to talk about, because it's what everybody's talking about, the sports war for Christmas between the NBA and NFL, and how it went last Wednesday, what our thoughts were of the games, and if this is going to kind of become a rivalry for viewership on that day. And then we're going to close the show with and leave plenty of time for LeBron talk. For anybody who doesn't know, LeBron James turns 40 tomorrow. And we want to talk about We're going to talk about some of his favorite moments. We got a lot of interactions on our social media pages about, favorite LeBron moments that we'll share. We're going to share some of our own, and then also talk about kind of where he is in the current game of basketball at 40 years old, and where, we see this season and how much more LeBron has in the tank. So we're going to get to all that. But before we do, I want to introduce again our guest, Zach. Zach is here not only to talk hoops with us, but he's actually got a new project kind of centered around creating Cavs content. So Zach, please introduce yourself to our fans and tell us a little about what you're about to start doing.
Yeah, for sure. And first of all, thanks for letting me come crash your party and hang out with you all.
Of course.
My name's Zach, as you mentioned. I am at Zach-NBA on YouTube. And on YouTube, in those comment sections, I have been what I'm taking is lovingly referred to as an NBA nerd, among many, many other things. But I focus on that one. And thanks to the fine folks at Sports Ethos, they have allowed me the opportunity to nerd out about the Cavs on a brand new podcast. So I'm excited for that. It's going to launch. We're doing this Sunday night. It's going to launch tomorrow, Monday at some point in time. And it's going to be, if you're not familiar with Sports Ethos, they're growing their team coverage. They've got a whole bunch of sports content that's fantastic, especially if you are into fantasy. If you're into fantasy, I would recommend finding the website, bookmarking the website, downloading the app, and literally making it part of just your daily everything. But it's definitely quality content from that standpoint as well. But my goal with the Cavs pod is to complement what's already out there, right? And I think the best way that I can do that is to bring context, to the season, to the things that we're seeing the Cavs do, provide something akin to a safe space for fellow nerds like me to nerd out over the Cavs, talk hoops backed by stats you've actually heard of. I'm going to do weekly episodes that celebrate the past week of Cavs basketball, give away some made up awards. This coming podcast is going to have things like people still watch basketball, even though the NFL tries to take over Christmas Game of the Week award, and the Matt Rife second funniest comedian to come out of Ohio award for Laugh of the Week, and these types of things. And I'll also use those episodes to talk, to hit on some topics that I'm finding interesting at that given time, and then a look ahead to the coming week of games. That's kind of the Monday Monday episode kind of wrapped up in a nutshell, and then I'm also going to have some guest discussions, coming on. Hopefully, you all will join me for one of those.
Yeah, of course.
And those, my first one of those is going to drop on Thursday. I've got Bob from Fear the Fro coming on to talk trade season with me. So, obviously, I'm going to keep an open mind. It's a new venture. See what the audience tells me is working and isn't working, but that's the plan as of right now. It's going to be on YouTube and all the places.
No,
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, it is, and I'm somebody we all love the Cavs, and I listen to several other Cavs podcasts. Just because I love hearing about it. I love people listening to other people's takes, and kind of helps me formulate my own and everything. So it's awesome, man. We wish you nothing but the best. And yeah, anytime you need somebody, let Skylar, me, I'm sure Tim as well, speaking for him, love to come on and talk hoops. We try and keep it a little bit higher level on here for our fan base. We definitely talk about stats and a little bit of like kind of intricacies of the game, but I try not to nerd out too much, because once I go down that road, I can't come back.
Hey, how lucky are we all that we are starting a Cavs podcast this year when the team is off to a roaring start?
I don't even think you call it start anymore. We're almost halfway through the season. They played 31 games. They're just flat out. That's something Tim and I said on one of maybe your last podcast. Yeah, it was Friday. Is let's just stop putting limitations or expectations on this team and just like kind of see where they go, right? Because like I was guilty of it. Like, hey, can they win 4 of the next 6? Can they do that? And then they win all 6. And then can they, steal this game and they actually win the next 3? And like, let's just try to stop trying to put a ceiling on the team. And so, yeah, no, with that, as I said, this is our NBA Weekly episode. We cover every single Cavs games, but once a week we look around kind of the NBA storylines. We try and do it through a Cavs fan's eyes, look for teams and players that might intertwine with the Cavs season. So tonight, but tonight we're going to do it a little different, but we want to start with our one Cavs subject, and then we're going to get into kind of like I said, the NBA versus NFL stuff, and then have a nice section on LeBron, because if there's one Cavalier in the history of Cavaliers basketball that deserves a nice segment celebrating them, it's LeBron James. So I'm gonna start with the Cavs 3-pointers. I'm going to give you all a little bit of info, and then Skylar and Zach, I want to get your reaction. So it hasn't become super common yet. I think it will soon. The Cavs' last 6 games and how much more 3-pointing has been a part of this 6-game win streak. In the 6 games, they are up to 47 attempts a game. That's up from about 37, 38 on average on the season. So they're shooting 9, 10 more threes a game. For context, 47 a game would be the second most in the league, next to Boston. They're shooting it at a 42.3% clip, which, to give you some context there, the Cavs lead the league in 3-point percentage at 40% a game. So they're up percentage from there. They became the second team in NBA history to make 20 plus threes in 4 straight games. 5 games ago, they actually made 19. So it's very close to a 5-game streak so far. And during the 6-game stretch, they are up to 128 points a game versus 121. So that's a lot of stats to say. The Cavs have won 6 straight games, and they've done it shooting a lot more 3-pointers than they're used to. And kind of where I want to go is, and Zach, I'll start with you as our guest. Like, why do you think it's ticked up so dramatically in the last 6 games? And what I'm really curious is this a good thing for the long term, or is this just like a, kind of spike that you see at different times in the regular season?
Well, clearly they hate good basketball, right? That's what we're being told. The Cavs are just vehemently against playing good, pretty basketball. I'm talking back to the basket, 12 feet and in, pound it, and not to mention, ISO jumpers from 18. That's what we want to see, and they are depriving us of that because they hate us. That's exactly what's happening. I think it goes back to what you were alluding to earlier. They're leading the league in 3-point percentage, and when you're leading the league in 3-point percentage and you spend the first, I don't know what it was, month and a half, middle of the pack in attempts, your analytics alarm bells are going off in the coaching rooms and saying, like, how do we get more of these up? Because we clearly are shooting them at an incredible clip. I did a video not that long ago, but long enough ago that all of the stats are probably useless at this point. But what was really interesting at that point in time was not just how incredibly accurate they had been from three, but where. This isn't a team that has guys camped out in the corners and they're just using the corner three as an extension of the mid range or as a layup for these guys, because the percentages are ridiculous. They shoot incredibly well above the break, and it's almost everybody. Aside from, at that point in time, the right corner was somehow voodooed because that one was the only spot pretty much on the floor that they were below league average. Everywhere else, they were wildly in the green in terms of 3-point shooting at that point in time. And now, I think they've just figured out, hey, we're shooting this at an incredibly high clip. We need to get more of these up, because if we can continue to hit them at a high clip, we're going to score more points, because that's how it works. 3 is more than 2. My math teacher in 3rd grade taught me that one, and I'm really, really proud that I remembered it. But I really think that that's about all that it is in terms of why. It was simple math. We're good at this. Let's do more of that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And Skylar, I want to get your take on this. Like, what do you think? Like, why now? I guess, like, why were the Cavs shooting the 3 very well, but their attempts were more middle of the pack? Why are they just this last 6 games making the 3-pointer, frankly, the center of their offense?
I think it has a lot to do with how Kenny Atkinson's running the offense. Because it's not like Boston where they're taking bad threes. They're every 3-point shot that they're taking is a good open shot, because they're moving the ball, they're facilitating, and this team is just stacked with shooters. I mean, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Sam Merrill, Georges Niang, Max Strus is back. Like, that's just to name a few. Evan Mobley's banging threes now. So I think a lot of it has to do with just the offense is able to generate those open looks because of how unselfless all these guys are and their ability to move the ball while still being able to attack the paint. Jared Allen is back to getting to 15, 16 points a game. Evan Mobley is still able to crash the boards and crash the glass. So I really just think the offense is humming on all cylinders.
I completely agree. I think you made some great points, and that was, I think, and I've kind of alluded to this, but I'll say it a little more clearly. The Cavs, I agree that they have very good shooters and everything, right? But I think the secret to their success with the 3-pointer is the quality of 3-point shot they're getting, because of namely the penetration of Mitchell and Garland, as well as other guys on the team, Mobley's development and being comfortable putting the ball on the floor, and how well, as you said very well, Skylar, they share the ball, right? I think there are so many different types of 3-point shot, not just like the different geography on the floor like Zach alluded to, but like, are you catching a pass and shooting in rhythm versus are you doing a crossover and just shooting up a 3 from 28 feet? And there's guys in the league that are so good that they can make that at a high clip, right? But I think, and I don't watch every single NBA game, but I feel pretty confident saying the Cavs get as high quality of 3-point shots as anybody in the league. Like, what do you think of that, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the impetus of whether or not you continue down this road, right? Like, I think a lot of it has to do with confidence, for one.
Sure.
I think earlier in the season, we still had some guys that maybe didn't always pull it. They might pass up a good shot to try to get a great shot, that old adage. And now they're like, oh, wait, this good shot is actually a great shot because I'm actually great at this. And I think that realization has hit, and I'm sure, not having a bug in the room, I'm sure there's also been a bit of a point of emphasis on it where that would be why we're seeing a stark change more recently.
Sure.
But I think as long as three things remain true, then it's going to, I think, continue this way, and should. And that's one, that it doesn't come at the expense of the process in which how they get those threes. Like as you were talking about, making sure that they stay good shots. They're not just shooting more threes for the sake of shooting more threes. They're just shooting the threes that they get from the process that they have had success with all year, with the pace at which they play, the ball movement that they have, the player movement that they have. These I know that that's kind of not super revolutionary analysis, but this team is still, and has been, like all year, fourth in the league in drives. They're third in the league in passes off of those drives, and they're first in assists off of drives. Yeah. As long as they keep doing that, they're going to keep collapsing the defense, and they're going to keep spraying out to open threes. And that is probably why they lead the league in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, shooting from whatever metric you pretty much want to find, or at least that I can find. They're first in the league in it. Yeah. And so I wouldn't want to see them go away from what they've been doing just to shoot more threes. Mm-hmm. But that's not what they've done so far. They've just pulled the trigger on the open ones that they're getting. And as you said, the percentages are actually climbing.
Yep, they are.
And if that's what the math is going to do, as somebody that does, data nerd stuff for a living outside of sports, which I hate to admit here on a sports live stream and a sports podcast, but you got to pay the bills somehow too. Right. In statistics, that's not all that relevant. You increase volume, and a lot of times efficiency suffers. Yep. Theirs is doing the opposite.
Yep.
Keep firing.
How much? I think a lot of that has to go with because somebody put in the comments here about the Finney Smith trade earlier, and I know that a lot of Cavs fans had him on their kind of target card, but I think a lot of things that need to go into consideration, especially when making trades, is chemistry. And I don't know if I remember a team that's had better chemistry than this team. And I think that also lends into the confidence factor of, I know I can, either drive this ball and JA or Mobley are going to clean up the glass, or I can dish it out and somebody's going to either take the shot and make the shot, or keep the ball moving. I do think chemistry kind of ties closely with the confidence factor that you were talking about, Zach.
No, I agree, Skylar. And I want to actually turn it back to you for 1 second, Skylar. And the last thing I want to talk about, because we should move on. I knew this episode was going to go long, but last thing on the 3-pointers, but I feel like we have to mention this. And I guess I'll ask both of you, but I'll start with Skylar. Fairly quickly, Evan Mobley's 3-point shooting the month of December has been off the charts. Is this a revolution, a hot streak, or somewhere in between? Skylar, you go first.
I wouldn't say a hot streak, because I think we came into the season, or Kenny has come into the season saying Evan Mobley we're going to force this step forward that we've all been waiting for. And it's working because he's running this offense kind of through Mobley in a sense. So I think this is another level to what Kenny Atkinson expects out of Mobley, which is not something obviously we saw in the previous coaching regime, where it was Evan Mobley, get in the paint, stay in the paint. So I think it has a lot to do with Kenny Atkinson adding this wrinkle into the offense, because quite frankly, it's one of the things that maybe they lack is somebody to space out in the 4 or 5 spot. So now you have Evan Mobley, who's able to space out the floor more. I mean, that just adds so many more potential breakdowns in the defense, which gives you more opportunities to move the ball around and just create havoc.
Zach, what are your thoughts on Mobley and his 3-point shooting?
I think he is the poster child for the confidence boost. Mm-hmm. and his willingness to shoot it. I think that he's going to shoot 3 for 5 and 4 for 6 every game from now until the end of the season? No, I don't. But I do think that this is fully within his capability to be effective as a 3-point shooter, as long as he's continuing to have that confidence. What I want to see is if he happens to go 0 for 4 one night, does he still take 4 the next night?
Yeah.
That'll
be the thing. Yeah, that'll be the true test of the confidence, right? Because anybody can be confident when things are going well.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree with you all. I think this is an evolution, even if it's not going to stay quite as good as it is right now. With Evan Mobley and the 3-point shooting, I do think, like a lot of guys on the team, particularly the bench guys, he is really benefiting from his 3-pointers are wide open. And that's a combination of some of the stats Zach said, how good the team is at penetrating and dishing, as well as Evan Mobley playing the 4 and the 5. 4 and 5s don't want to guard other 4 and 5s at the 3-point line. So you combine those two things, he's getting, practice 3-point shots. And I think that could very well continue. I mean, if he keeps shooting like this, yeah, they may have to respect him a little bit more out there, but I agree. I want him to, like Zach said, if he goes 0 for 4, 3 games in a row, I want him to keep firing, because for this Cavs team to peak, they need him to be able to shoot from the outside. Because I do think one of their fallbacks the last couple of years has been playing Allen and Mobley, and neither of them be able to shoot, outside jump shots. And that's hard to do in the NBA now. But if Evan Mobley can shoot threes, those two playing together becomes even a more advantageous situation than it's been. So yeah, but with that, we'll move on. We're going to talk about Christmas, and we're going to get into the NBA versus the NFL. It's been a lot of talk on social media. People are, there's NFL people saying, look at the ratings, NFL dominates everything. And then NBA heads like me are like, look at the games. There was 5 NBA games, and the average margin of victory was 5 points. There were 2 football games in a sport that is meant to have closer game, more low scoring games. And the average margin of victory was 24 points. So to me, I thought, and Skylar, I'm going to turn to you in a second, but I thought this Christmas was as good a regular season day the NBA has had in probably 5 to 6 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like with the Cavs not playing, we have a little bit of freedom to pick what we want. We'll go around the horn. We'll start with you, Skylar. What is like your favorite storyline or game or individual player moment from what you got to see on Christmas?
I don't know if I can pick I guess storyline. All of this NBA stars starred. All of the big names, the Tatums and Giannis and Luka, like they all had big games, and hopefully Luka comes back sooner rather than later.
He was on his way to having a big game until he got hurt. But yeah, that's what you're saying. Go ahead.
But it's just all the stars were on display. And I think that's something the NBA needs. But I want to get back to maybe those big rivalries that we saw. Granted, I'm a little skewed, but Warriors, Cavs, like a huge storyline that bled on for years, just rivalry games. That's what I want to see more of.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Zach, I'll let you pick out one. What was your favorite, thing to come out of NBA Christmas this year?
I think the low hanging fruit is Steph versus LeBron volume 3287 at this point in the box set. But I'll tell you the one that I actually just kind of brought me joy for almost no reason was Mikal Bridges going off.
Yeah.
I know as a Cavs fan, I'm not supposed to want something like that to happen. I just enjoyed the irony of it, because this was a guy who, if you just read Twitter, his shot is broken. They overpaid. He's so terrible for the Knicks and all. And he goes for whatever it was, 41, I think, on Christmas, and he kind of goes head to head with Wemby, who's from another planet. I'm fairly
literal
certain
Martian.
Yeah. I don't think that's marketing. I'm fairly certain that's accurate. So yeah, that one I liked. But I think to your point, Skylar, about the stars starring, I think that is potentially huge for the NBA long term, for them to have gotten the whatever it was, the best ratings that they've had on a Christmas in like 5 years, and get a 40 plus from Wemby, get a near 40 from Ant, and then still have LeBron and Steph doing LeBron and Steph things to kind of save the day. I think it's the hopeful little small passing of the torch from those two to the other stars in the league. It really is just unfortunate that Luka went out and you didn't potentially get another one of those MVP candidates just going off.
No, for absolutely. And I think you guys chose great ones. And as you said, the low-hanging fruit is Curry and LeBron. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. I'm going to give everybody a chance to talk about that game. But some of the other storylines that I loved, I agree. We won't. You guys already mentioned it, but Wemby's the next best player in the NBA. I don't know if it's going to be in a year, 5 years, or whatever. If he stays healthy, he is going to be the best player in the NBA at some point in the near future. I have no doubt in my mind about that. And
sorry, not to cut you off, but do you think he would get actual like star face of the league treatment, or is he going to be like in the shadows like Tim Duncan because he's in San Antonio and under Greg Popovich?
I think he might be a little bit more like Duncan, but not because he's in San Antonio, but because he's French. And so but I do think he is charismatic enough that he can maybe bring in more NBA fans than other star players that are international. He is a very charismatic young guy, and he's such an anomaly in a league that has the most athletic guys in the world. He stands out like that. And that's crazy. So anyway, I think Wemby going off the way he did, even a losing effort, was one of the best things that happened for the NBA that day. As far as like this season goes, I think one of the best things that happened, well, two things, but they're kind of in the same vein. Minnesota winning in good fashion, and then the Sixers beating Celtics, because those were two teams they were counting on to be upper echelon teams this year to like drive popularity. They have American star players on those teams, and Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, Ant Edwards. And so I thought those teams looking like they may be starting to turn the tides on their season was a really big thing for the NBA. But for me personally, as much as I hate seeing anybody, including Luka, get injured, even though I hate watching Luka play, when he did, that was as vintage of a Kyrie performance as I've seen in a long time. Like I pulled up the numbers, 39 points on 14 of 27 shooting, 5 threes. What do you have? A handful of assists. Kyrie is actually a very team focused, very collaborative type player. Like he always has been. It's why he worked so well for a long time in Cleveland. But when he's in a position like that where other guys are injured or he just has it going and they just let him cook, he is one of the most fun guys in the league to watch still, even at like 32 years old. So I really enjoyed watching him. But the number one storyline was obviously Steph versus LeBron, because they still have the most name recognition in the game, are still in the top echelon of players in the league. And I wanted to start out with this because we can talk about the game. And the game was fantastic. But I listen to a lot of Bill Simmons, and Bill, he doesn't need my plug for sure, but I think it was a really interesting, it was a really interesting point that he made that got me thinking a lot. Is LeBron and Steph being the highlight moment on Christmas is the best and worst thing that could happen to the NBA. Because in the short term, it's the best because it was the highest rated regular season game in 5 years for the NBA. So that's a great short term win. It's bad that they still rely on those guys to bring in the most viewers because they haven't marketed the younger stars to where they are nearly as beloved as those two guys are. So I'll go reverse. I'll start with you, Zach. What do you think about that comment of LeBron and Steph being the highlight game on the biggest NBA regular season day being both a good and a bad thing?
Well, I think he's right. in short. So back to you, Bob. No, like I think, and Bill has a tendency to say some stuff kind of off the cuff and cause some waves, but I think this one is about as straightforward as you can be. I think that I think it's going to be a low point for the NBA when LeBron actually finally hangs it up, because they do still rely on him so heavily to bring eyeballs and to bring interest and to bring discussion. You know, one of the reasons, in my mind, one of the reasons that LeBron is as impactful for the league as a whole as he is one, he actually wants it. He actually took the mantle and decided, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to shoulder this responsibility of, you know, being the face of the league, where other guys don't want to do that. You know, Jokic has absolutely no interest in doing that.
Basketball?
Well, right. But then at the same time, like I don't know that it's the NBA hasn't marketed the younger stars, but nobody has captivated the general audience the way that a guy like LeBron has. And that, I think, is because of how polarizing he is. You can't say a positive thing about LeBron James on the internet without a swarm of people coming to tell you how awful he is. And you cannot say a negative thing about LeBron James on the internet without a swarm of people coming to his defense.
I'm in that swarm.
We fly together, but nobody else that they have in the league right now has that level of polarization with the level of notoriety, with the level of success. I mean, this is a guy who was in, I heard we're going to do a LeBron segment today, so
we are.
maybe I should sit tight for a second. But this is a guy that came into the league at 18 with the biggest hype of anyone ever as a prospect. And not only did he actually live up to the hype in a way that I didn't think was humanly possible back in 2003 when I was in, like, hopefully passing whatever math class I was in that year in middle school. Like, I didn't think there was any way that anyone could live up to the hype that he had. Not only did he live up to it, he exceeded it. And all we've had since then is this is the biggest hyped prospect since LeBron. And not a single one of them has even come close to living up to it, let alone exceeding it. And that's where Wemby's got a shot.
Yeah.
But we'll see. As you mentioned, not being an American-born star does not help him in that regard in terms of people, embracing him in that way. But we'll see. I think Ant is the one that's got the personality, that has the potentially has the interest to do it, and actually has the game that could get there. I just think he needs a minute.
Yeah.
And I don't think that this year actually, like, could have been that catapult. And they're just one of the weirdest vibe teams in the league.
Weird.
And that has kind of just like tanked his
running. I agree with you. Ant's not quite ready, but even more so, his team's not ready to him elevate to one of the top stars in the league, or the top American star. I think that without a doubt. I think he needs a little bit more time to just kind of, I think he's still almost feeling out his game. He's shooting like twice as many threes or more than he did previously this season. So no, I agree with you. I think he's as talented a young star as there is in the league, American or not, other than Wemby. And, but it's going to be a few years, I think, or at least a couple years for them to maybe evolve that roster. Maybe he ends up on another team before he can get to where he could really elevate to that star level. But Skylar, before we move on, it would give you a chance. Like, what do you think of the argument that Steph and LeBron still being the biggest show in the NBA is both a very good and very bad thing?
I think it, like Bill said, it's good for the short term because they needed that ratings boost for Christmas Day. Obviously, with the NBA on NBC coming back, you kind of want to start things off, hot going into that. But I think it's horrible in the sense that they're still leaning on these guys because, these guys don't have a lot much longer in them. I think LeBron said he's got a year or two left in him. And the old adage was when LeBron leaves, that team falls apart. I'm afraid that the same thing is going to happen to the league when LeBron leaves. So I think they got to find either designate somebody or find somebody. But to Zach's point, nobody's really shown that they want it. Nobody's shown that they want to be the face of the league, or has been able to captivate us the way that LeBron did. Still does. I shouldn't even say did, still does.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of I think that want to is part of how we got, because there was a little bit of a lull between Jordan and LeBron too, where the league was sort of like, what's going to be our next thing? But Kobe was like, here I am.
Yeah.
I want that thing. And then, LeBron had to eventually take it from him. Like, no. Like this is mine now. But I don't get a sense that there's anybody in the league right now that's really vying for it that hard. The only two that come to mind, I do think are Ant and Wemby, because I think they're the ones that have the personality. And I think they have the desire.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That can be like an evolving conversation this year. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens these next 2, 3, 4 playoff runs between now and when Steph and LeBron and Durant and those guys do kind of call it a career. Maybe in that time, someone like a Jason Tatum, if the Celtics win again, could really ascend. And Ant Edwards, as we talked about, maybe Wemby's evolution happens in that amount of time. But I think I agree with everything you all said. And I think the biggest thing is they need to start working on the next plan now for sure. Because the end's closer than the beginning with those guys. All right. Well, so on this segment still, and I'm going to read off a lot of stats about big talk this last few days on the internet, probably at holiday parties, has been the NBA versus the NFL and ratings and popularity and all of that kind of stuff. So I dug into it because I was kind of sick of hearing all of the people in my life who are NFL guys tell me about how much better the NFL is than the NBA. And the when it comes to it, I'll give you all the stats and everything. They're both incredibly popular in their own segments, and who really cares what somebody else likes? Just worry about what you like. But I since I did do the research, so I found out when they say the NFL is getting 4x, 5x amount of viewers per game than the NBA, that is true. But there's a couple caveats. Like one, the NFL only plays 1 day a week, and they put their games on at prime television watching times, where the NBA, because they play 3 or 4 games a week, they can't just highlight 1 game a week. So that's a contributing factor. Another is, I don't know if people know this or not, but to be counted as a viewer of the program, there is no minimum amount of time you have to watch. If you watch for 1 second, you are a viewer of a 4-hour-long program, right? Well, the average NFL game is 65 minutes longer than the average NBA game, like about 150% as long. So that means they have 150% as much time to acquire these viewers from a second. So really, you have to shave off a third of the NFL's total before you even start talking or comparing things, right? The other thing is that that annoys me is that people always say that NFL is killing the NBA in ratings. It's only true if you include the last 2 words of that statement, in America, because in the world, the NBA is dominating the NFL as far as popularity, to the tune of 34 of the 40 largest countries, according to by population, watch more NBA than NFL. and a lot of them by a wide margin. A big part of that is China. 52% of the people in China have watched an NBA game this year. China's population is almost 5 times that of the United States, right? So worldwide, the NBA is doing great. They do have a problem in America with popularity and everything. So all that and giving stats and everything. And the last thing I really want to talk to you guys about is I'll ask you and see if you get the question right. What is the one thing that people, especially people our age, do more than watch TV? I bet you two do it too.
Online, internet,
social media, right? And people are they're starting to figure out how to monetize social media and everything. The NBA has 100 million followers between Twitter and Facebook, the 2 largest social media platforms. The NFL has 57 million. Like, the interaction wise, the NBA in 2022 had 7.7 billion social media interactions. The NFL had 3.5. So all of this to say, the NBA is incredibly popular in large parts of the world, and I think it's just consumed differently than sitting down and watching a game the way people do for the NFL. And after giving you all that, Zach, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on, this quote unquote rivalry? Like, some of the stuff I laid out, like, where do you think we really stand, NBA versus NFL, as far as fandom?
Well, I mean, for us hoops heads, it doesn't matter. We're going to watch hoops.
Sure.
And for a portion of the American audience, it doesn't matter. They're going to watch football. Right. Where you come down to the conversation about ratings and whether it matters is if there's big game basketball happening, big game football happening, where does the casual sports fan go between those two things? And in America, the answer is going to be football. Football is just 100%. A thing that we care about here in a way that nobody else cares about, as the numbers you just talked about globally, like other countries don't. But I mean, I come from a small town, background and small market radio. And I got to tell you, what was just as big of a deal as Sunday was Saturday. Mm-hmm. And what was just as big a deal as Saturday was Friday night.
Right.
The way that even just high school football games captivate towns literally across the entire United States, you don't get that with the sport of basketball. You might have some communities that do, support their teams, but in terms of nobody's writing a country song about a high school basketball team. It just doesn't get that. There's something about football in this country that captivates people in a way that is just, I don't know. And that Beyonce point is a good one, because the thing that I was reading was the ratings for the NFL Christmas Day peaked during the halftime show. So that had nothing to do with the NFL. It was the whole Beyonce thing. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, I mean, it just is what it is. And if you love basketball and you love the NBA, then who cares? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. It's really just the casual sport fan who is deciding between 2 games, and they're probably going to pick football, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that. I totally agree. I think I was a prisoner of the moment with it was so talked about. It felt like the NBA was getting beaten down on what should have been a day that they should have been celebrated, which at Christmas.
Yeah.
And so I think that just got me more fired up about it than I normally am. But Skylar, what's your opinion on kind of this whole NBA versus NFL in America and the world, and where do you stand?
I think it comes a lot with kind of what Devin said. There's just so much more pageantry around NFL, with the halftime shows, and even in the high school level, because I'm also from a small farm town. Even like the band comes out and does a number during the halftime. stuff that you don't really get in a basketball sense. And the pace of play is just so much more. Where in NFL, you're kind of waiting for a big play, something. Where NBA, it's up and down, up and down. Like you gotta stay into it. I agree that you're gonna watch hoops. You're gonna watch hoops. You're gonna watch football. You're gonna watch football. I think one thing, excuse me, that the NBA could take from the NFL though is keeping the same cadence for games. So across the country, I'm Eastern time, so it's 1:00 Eastern, 4:25 Eastern, 8:05 Eastern, versus like tomorrow's game is at 9:30 at night because they're over on the West Coast. So like keeping that same kind of cadence, I think would help also. Like it's the same time every night, no matter where they are.
I don't disagree with that, Scott. I think I agree with you in the consistency, just a little bit different ways. I think that if the NBA like designated NBA nights, like they play every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, something like that, and they just play those 3 games a week when people just got it in their brains, like they have with football. Football is played on Sunday. Now they're doing everything they can to try and play every night of the week nowadays. But in people's heads, Sunday at lunchtime is football time, right? So I do think that is part of it. The other part that is undeniable is the NFL has done a better job making it easier for fans to watch games than the NBA has, or any sport has, to be honest. Like NBA is still doing blackouts on local markets. They're still, like I was blacked out of a Hawks game living in Nashville, and that's 3.5 hours away. Like there's no reason to black me out from that. Not that I'm a Hawks fan, but I was just trying to watch basketball. So I think the one very real thing is the NBA just make it easy for people to be fans, right? The baseball is the worst of this. Baseball makes it so hard for people to be fans. That's why they're losing them in droves. But I do think there's a lot the NBA could do and learn from the NFL as far as making it easy to be a fan. So with that, I did at least want to give that a little bit of time, but I want to leave plenty of time. And again, we're going to go long, but to talk about LeBron James. LeBron James, for anybody who doesn't know, in a few hours will turn 40 years old. He will be like the 11th player to ever play in the NBA at 40 years old. He will be far and away the best 40-year-old player there's ever been in the NBA still. And so before we get into, I want to give us a chance to talk about, some of our favorite LeBron games, LeBron moments, all those things. I did put out a request on some of our social media, got a lot of, or I put it on Reddit, I should say, and got a lot of responses. I want to read a few that I wasn't even thinking of that I thought were really good. So some of the best LeBron moments, Chloe 43, 2007 playoffs against Pistons when he went for 25 straights. I mean, I think a lot of people remember that one. That was incredible. Eli 44, the 2009 Eastern Conference Finals winner against the Magic. That was again one of the big moments in his first trip around in Cleveland. Get yourself a Puppers. Great screen name.
Great
the 2015 East semis, the Eastern Conference semis game winner against the Bulls. That was the one where he caught an inbounds pass and hit a fadeaway three for the game winner. That was an incredible moment. D-Den-Z, the 2008 dunk on KG. If you guys don't remember that one, YouTube it. It's an absolute incredible one. Another one who I cannot say this person's username and asked if they wanted me to say something else. And he said, just say the memory. People know who it was as far as the Reddit community goes. In 2009, LeBron pinned a block against Yao Ming on the backboard. Which if some of you are young and don't remember Yao Ming very much, he was a 7'6" center for Houston who was very good for a short amount of time. And young LeBron pinned him on the backboard on a layup, and it was pretty incredible. KAC 937, the full court inbound banked in three against the Wizards in the 2017 playoffs. That one was incredible. And then in who I have I5 Sky Blue, the Game 7 Eastern Conference Finals 2018 against Boston. There's a tipped out rebound. They give it to LeBron. Like Marcus Morris tries to tackle him as he's going up for a layup. Jaylen Brown goes up to block the shot. He still puts in a layup. Obviously gets fouled. The entire crowd, like he said, the silence just echoed because they were in the Garden, and it was just one of those one of his last like big moments in Cleveland before he did go to LA. Those are all fantastic ones. I wrote down some of those, but I want to let you all go first. Zach, I'll go with you. Do you have, if I ask you about LeBron, like, a favorite play, a favorite game, a favorite series, if it's the playoffs, what is like one of the first things that comes to your mind? Even if it's one of these, you can repeat. It's fine.
Yeah, one of them was taken. I was in the building for that 08 dunk on Kevin Garnett.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
Which was incredible to see live. It was the same game that his mom came out and tried to fight Paul Pierce for a particularly hard foul. And that happened about 10, like courtside, which is definitely not where I was sitting, but I could see it from where I was sitting. Yeah, but that was crazy. I remember they made do you remember Sports Science?
Yeah,
I love Sports Science.
Why did that
awesome.
go away? Why did that go away?
Well, because people suck and they take things that we love. But when they did the Sports Science episode on that dunk, I sat there and watched it and all, and I was like, yeah, I know, I remember. I got to see that. It was at the other end. I was under the other bucket.
That's awesome. Skylar, and I have a list of them I'll go through also, and we'll talk, and we're going to spend some time talking about him in the 4 straight finals against Golden State. I have some stats for that and everything. And so you can take one of those.
Or did that happen?
So yeah, if you have something else, Skylar, I want to give you a chance to go first. What's one of your favorite memories of LeBron?
Well, okay, I'll take Game 7 out of it because that will forever.
We named the podcast after it, so
the best NBA game ever.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of kind of, how they always have the legend of Michael Jordan and how there were some really good teams in the 90s. They just ran into Michael Jordan. Like they just could never get past him. Mm-hmm. And I love that adage for LeBron and Cleveland. Particularly like the Bulls had some good competitive teams and they just shut them out all the time. The Raptors had really good teams. Particularly, one of my favorites is Game 3 against the Raptors in 2018. And they tied game. I think there's like 3 seconds left on the clock. They get it to LeBron. He dead sprints down the court and just hits just this little bank shot floater to end the game. I just love LeBron being like the bully to all those like really good Eastern teams whenever he was here. And then, just him and Kyrie going for 41. That was awesome. And then just Game 7. For like anytime it pops up as like a video on Facebook or Instagram or anything, like I watch it in its entirety. And most of it's like the last 2 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's awesome. One of the commenters on Reddit, like I had an interaction with him because my first big moment of this. So I will actually say, I saw LeBron play when he was a junior in high school. So technically that would be the first, my first one, and getting to see him live at that age was incredible. But the 2007 against Detroit, when he goes for 25 points against the defending champions, that's an incredible one. Obviously, the 2016 finals, I think it's almost cheating to say that's your favorite. But those last 3 games against Golden State, I remember it vividly. I think I had just really gotten into social media. This is 8 or 9 years ago. I was a little late to it. But I remember vividly Draymond getting suspended after game 4. LeBron has the big game, 41 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists with Draymond out. And so the whole narrative is, of course, he can have a big game without Draymond. Wait till next game. Draymond's back. The next game, he scored 41 points again. And with 8 rebounds and 11 assists. Like, as good a back-to-back performances in elimination games as you'll ever find in NBA history. And then game 7, I mean, it's almost not fair to say it wasn't a great game for him because he had a triple-double. He had 27, 11, 11, but a little bit worse shooting night. But in fairness, everyone shot terrible in that game. It was incredible. It was a slugfest. But the 2016 finals were great. It's easily the highlights. For me, I have 2 that I actually mentioned. So the 2015 finals, I took the whole finals, right? So this is when Love and Kyrie are both hurt. So LeBron's going against Golden State, one of the best regular season teams in NBA history, and he's doing it with Matthew Dellavedova and Timothy Mozgov and a lot of other guys, that are really fun role players, but not probably the best supporting cast for playing the Golden State Warriors at that time. That finals, he averaged 36 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists, playing like 46 and a half minutes a game, and was just incredible to win games 2 and 3 in that series with the deck stacked so against him. Like that, it was just even in a losing effort, it was maybe my favorite series of ever seeing him. But if I'm going with a single game, I can't believe it hasn't been mentioned. 2018 finals, game 1, the infamous J.R. Smith game. And maybe it's not mentioned because it's such a painful loss to Cavs fans. But
It's
LeBron played 48 minutes, 51 points on 60% shooting, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. Again, I think that 2018 Golden State team is one of, if not the most talented team in NBA history. And the Cavs were not a talented team. LeBron dragged them to the 2018 finals. And to have that game going single-handedly against one of, if not the best team in NBA history, was just incredible to me. And it was such a shame that it ended the way it did with the J.R. Smith thing. Because I always liked J.R. Smith too. And we'll talk about all the we'll do another go around, but Cavs fans don't hate me. One of my favorite LeBron moments was actually when he was with the Heat, and it was the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston when the Heat were down 3-2, and everybody was talking. This is when LeBron can't win the big one kind of thing, and he goes into Boston and has 45 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists on 75% shooting, and just. You'll never hear a rabid fan base as quiet as the Garden was that night. And so that was just one of my all-time favorite LeBron performances. So with that, I mean, some of the ones I said, or maybe something else came to your mind, Zach, like what else about LeBron really sticks out to you is I'm just guessing maybe the most influential NBA player athlete you've ever watched.
Well, I mean, for me, I guess I can tell my mini story here. Like,
Sure.
He's the reason I'm a Cavs fan.
Me too.
And I mean that sounds silly, right? But my like Cavs fan story goes back to like 06, 07. I wasn't a Cavs fan from the get-go, when it comes to my my introduction to basketball. I guess maybe MJ and Space Jam is probably like my earliest like memories of the NBA, but it was Allen Iverson for me. Iverson was everything to me. I remember laying on the floor of my childhood bedroom with my little 20-inch toaster that my mom convinced me was a TV, like beating on the side of it, trying to get the rabbit ears to give me something other than snow, during the 01 finals, that AI is going against the Lakers, and how much I hated those Lakers so much. But after he had got traded to the Nuggets, my dad, knowing how big of an Allen Iverson fan I was, took me to a game up in Cleveland when Denver came to town. So it was Iverson and Melo coming to play LeBron and the Cavs. And I just remember like that day, I walked into the building just being a fan of Allen Iverson. And I walked out of the building a Cavs fan.
Yeah.
Like
No,
this room, aside from my Allen Iverson shrine that's over there that you can't see on camera, like this whole room is just like decked to that era, that origin, I guess you could say, of Cavs fandom, and most of it is LeBron. All the little Nick, like just it is. And I followed him, when he was in Miami. I continue to follow him in LA. I don't stop being a Cavs fan, but I'm also not going to stop being a LeBron fan.
I'm with you. And Skylar, I'm going to give you another chance too, but I kind of have a similar story. Like I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. Like when I was very young, I liked the Pacers. Like Reggie Miller was the first guy I really loved. And then I became a Kobe guy. Even if I wasn't really a Lakers fan, I just loved Kobe. And LeBron, I became a Cavs fan because of LeBron, just like you. He was from, and I think it's because he was an Ohio guy, and I happened to have a chance to see him play in high school, and just wanted to follow him. And I wanted to follow, as Zach, you said very well earlier, like an 18-year-old had the highest expectations ever placed on an athlete at 18 years old, and I was really interested to see how close he could get to living up to him, and he actually exceeded him, and did it while having the most controversial thing that's ever happened in a 22-year career be like he decided to announce where he was going in free agency in kind of a dumb way. So I love LeBron to this day. The Cavs are my team. LeBron's just my player. I still follow him. And Skylar, I'm going to give you one more go around. Any of the, jogging your memory, or some of the ones I said, anything else kind of you really think of when you think of LeBron as like one of your favorite moments watching him?
I mean, I think I just got stories like you guys. Like, I think LeBron is the reason I am an NBA fan.
Mm-hmm.
I was 10 years old when he got drafted, or when he came into the league. So, I had Space Jam with Michael Jordan, and NBA on NBC was on around the house, but basically around the NBA, but nothing pulled me in like LeBron. We were all witnesses. It just everything around him, his ability on the court, his personality, how marketable he was. Like he was everywhere. And just really, really the athlete that sucked me into not only the Cavs, but just the NBA as a whole, as a young, impressionable 10-year-old.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very true. And one more thing I just thought of, I of all the notes I took, I can't believe I didn't write this down. One of my favorite moments of LeBron, of course, it is Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, but I will say my wife does not like basketball, right? And she happens to be from Cleveland, but her and I were at a music festival that set up a like tent sports bar that we went in and watched the game. And I've never seen my wife cheer louder, even in the sports that she really enjoys, such as baseball. She got like so into it in that moment. Like I watched him inspire the person closest to me to root for him in that moment, even though like the next day could care less about basketball. So he was so great. And I do want to do one more round on LeBron current day, right? He turns 40 tomorrow. He's still playing at an all-star level. I mean, that game on Christmas was phenomenal. The Olympics this summer was phenomenal. But we're kind of getting right to the point where his place in the game is just starting to creep up higher than his play, like where he is as a player versus where his like status is in the game and everything. And like, so I'll start with you, Skylar. Like, what do you think about current day LeBron? How much longer can he keep up this at all-star level? Like, and maybe how do you see it ending? Right. Because we're somewhere close to the end. He said it himself. Like, how do you see it? And do we see a graceful end? Do we see, an unfortunate end? Like, what do you think about like this last chapter of LeBron's career?
I think he'll end it gracefully. I don't think he wants to go out like And no offense to the other guys. I don't think he wants to go out like Jordan or Vince Carter or a lot of those guys who kind of hung around the league a little bit longer where they're coming off the bench or playing minimal minutes. I honestly think he could have a few more years in him if JJ Redick didn't play him so much. Jiminy Christmas. Playing him like 40 minutes a night in regular season games.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to end it in LA. Unfortunately, I don't think he's coming back as a Cav, unless he does like a 1-day contract to retire as a Cav. I think he retires in LA. I think he does it on his terms. It's not going to be an injury. It's not going to be lack of ability. I think he's just, personally, I think he's just tired of being the shoulders that the NBA weigh on. Zach, what about you?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I think he has the weirdest dilemma on his hands of most. We don't see a lot of athletes that have what he's kind of grappling with. And that is, he's going to finish out this season and he's going to be able to go back and he's going to look at his numbers and he's going to see that he's still playing like a top 10, top 15 guy in the NBA. And he's going to look at the fact that he's 40 years old and that if he'd stopped dyeing it, that whole beard would just be gray. And he's going to be like, I can still, in nights like Christmas, right? Like that's a good example of it. He can still be the best player on the court in the best league in the world. Why would I not keep playing? But he's just at the point where he can't do it every night anymore.
That's it.
I think that Kirk Goldberry had a really good piece for The Ringer where he went through some of the numbers that we're seeing from LeBron right now. And it's the first time in his entire career, we're on year 22, that his team has actually had negatively impacted during the minutes that he's on the floor.
Yeah.
Literally the first time ever. And I personally don't care. I don't care that that's where he is right now. I don't care that he's not the freight train in transition anymore and he's taking too many threes. I don't care that he's not the one, focal point, heliocentric, capable carry the entire offense for your team to a championship guy anymore. He's still able to turn it on in a moment and shut down the guy on the other side and take it to anybody that's standing in front of him, in spurts and in moments. And I'm going to enjoy as many of those moments as I possibly can. And I think it's incredibly ironic that today the Lakers trade for Dorian Finney-Smith about 3 years too late.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
All they've done since they blew up that title team is try to find that next guy that's going to help LeBron carry the offense and take some of the burden of creation off of LeBron's shoulders when he didn't need that. What he needed was Dorian Finney-Smith's, and you might have had a shot at another title. And now he actually does need help to carry the offensive load, and you trade for Dorian Finney-Smith. So, here you go.
Yeah,
so,
sorry, go ahead, Scholar.
Before getting into it, Kevin, would we see a longer LeBron career outside of that LA team that can't seem to really do anything around him? If he were on a title contender, I'm not gonna say the Cavs because that's the easy pick, but let's put him in maybe not Phoenix. I'll say Minnesota. Pairing him with Ant. Does that persuade LeBron to stick around longer because he knows the team with actual aspirations instead of just floundering for the 8 to 10 seed?
So I don't think so, Scott. I think you're right. It could, but kind of to both your guys' points, I think he wants to go out on his terms. He could, I'm fully convinced he could play another 5 years if he would transition into, I don't know, more of 40 to 50 game player a season, like, because he would be worth having on a roster, having him play 50 regular season games, save his legs. And he also could be a great contributor if he went to a better team, just like you suggested, Skylar. If he went to Boston and he just had to like fit in, right? And
I didn't want to say Boston, but
I know you didn't. I know you didn't. But to me, why after 22 seasons of being the most dominant player of this century, most dominant athlete of it's him or Tom Brady is the most dominant athlete of this century, right? Why I don't think he's going to want to end his career in a lesser capacity role. I think he would rather ride this train as well as he's playing now. He has given up a little bit of control of the offense and things like that, but play about the same way he is now for as long as he can, which might only be another season or two, and then just call it. Like I really see that being his end, and I could be wrong. Maybe he's like, I got to win one more title, even if it's as the third banana on Dallas or something, right?
Memphis would be good.
Yeah, Memphis would be a fun one. They're one of my top league pass teams outside the Cavs. They're a lot of fun right now. But with that, like, we are way easily the longest episode ever. So I wrote something down, my favorite LeBron stats I want to hit you guys with, and this is where we'll wrap the show. It's all playoff stats, right? In the playoffs, LeBron has played 287 playoff games, most in NBA history.
Damn.
Averaged 41 and a half minutes in those 287 playoff games, and never missed one playoff game for injury. Never missed one in 22 seasons. I think that, especially is kind of, how basketball's evolved to where people get injured all the time. Plus there's a load management thing. It might be the most impressive of all of this incredibly impressive stat that he has been able to show up every single playoff game and play almost the entire game of more playoff games than anybody in history.
It's like adding 3 seasons onto it.
It's really
so he's at season.
Yeah,
he's at season 26 right now.
Yes. It's crazy. And from all of us here at the podcast, LeBron, happy birthday, bud. Like, hope you're having some good wine and hanging out with the fam, and we look forward to seeing you here in a couple nights when the Cavs play the Lakers here on Christmas Eve or on New Year's Eve. Sorry. But for that, Zach, thanks so much for joining us, buddy. Good luck with the new pod. Like, we're big supporters. Happy to come on anytime. Send us the link to when you drop the first one. We'll share it on our socials so everybody can find you easily. And so for Skylar Webker, I'm Kevin Lynch. Thanks so much for hanging in for the longest ever episode of the Block the Shot to Stop. And as always, Skylar,
go Cavs.